For the second task in the Goblet of Fire, Harry had to eat gillyweed and grow gills so he could swim into the Black Lake, which you might assume would all be done with CGI. But nope, they actually did it for real. The gills were made out of silicone and silk so that they would billow underwater. They had to be glued onto Daniel Radcliffe's neck so firmly so that they would stay put during the long underwater filming process, and also during the harrowing scene where he had to swim to the surface carrying two heavy, lifelike dolls of Ron and Gabrielle Delacour. In the end, Daniel said that he was really proud that he made it through.
I had prosthetics on before, and it's like, it can be tough, it can be like hard work.
Seeing Voldemort for the first time was a huge undertaking because of how enormous the fans' expectations were for that exact moment. In order to transform the handsome Ralph Fiennes into the Dark Lord, they used a combination of makeup and prosthetics. The process took hours, but luckily he only had to do the full transformation about 60 to 70 times throughout the whole series, and about 50 of those times were for the last two movies. Rafe still wanted to be able to act under it all, so they covered his eyebrows, reshaped his eyes, added long, creepy fingernails, and false teeth. But the transformation wasn't complete until they removed his nose using CGI.
Sort of slightly translucent, vein-like quality.
In order to transform human actors into Gringotts goblins, the makeup team started their work at 4 a.m. They created molds of each actor's face and created a combination of rubber masks and individual prosthetic parts to attach one by one. The actors also had to have their hands covered with extensive makeup and prosthetic pieces, long fake fingernails, and dentures to finish off the look. Each goblin took 4 hours to get ready, and they even wore contact lenses that obscured their vision so much that they needed chaperones to help get them around the set.
On this one, we're doing 45 full prosthetic makeups.
British actor Warwick Davis not only played Professor Flitwick, the first Goblin bank teller, but also Griphook in the Harry Potter series.
Very unusual, is it?
To make sure he was unrecognizable from one character to the next, it took hours and hours in the makeup chair. First, they created a cast of his face, which involved sitting under layers of silicone and plaster for hours, and only his nose holes free to breathe. Once the prosthetic pieces for Griphook were applied, Warwick said he had to relearn how to use his face underneath all those extra layers, and totally adjust his voice to speak through the false teeth.
Hello. Ready for the office.
Robbie Coltrane, who plays Hagrid, is tall, but not giant tall. In order to transform him into the half-giant Hagrid, they gave him risers in his shoes and padded him with heavy costumes, extra wigs, and prosthetics to make him appear larger. But they also brought in a 6'4" body double for wide shots, who had to wear some massive padding and a prosthetic animatronic Hagrid head. Because the costume was so huge and heavy, they actually attached tubes that pumped cold water into it, so the body double didn't overheat and pass out.
The embarrassment of seeing yourself 18 feet high in front of a lot of people you don't know.
In order to make the actor who played Dumbledore's brother Aberforth look as much like Michael Gambon as possible, they used a lot of makeup and extensive wigs. The makeup crew added silicone to his forehead and face to push back his hairline, applied prosthetic bags under his eyes, completely changed his eyebrows, and, of course, added his long hair and beard to finish off the look.
It was quite interesting because, in a way, you were working on a blank canvas.
Even though you might think it was CGI, the scene in which Harry accidentally blows up his Aunt Marge was all done in camera. It took 20 people to build and apply the inflatable suit to Pam Ferris, the actress who played Aunt Marge, and included pumps, degassing chambers, and inflatable bladders. They even created a balloon shaped and painted like her face, attached it to her body, and pumped it full of air to give the effect of her face inflating. To film Professor Lupin turning into a werewolf, they created each step of the transformation on the actor David Thewlis with prosthetic makeup before adding CGI in post. The makeup team wanted to avoid the cliché werewolf transformation, so they focused on changing his eyes and bringing out the two huge scars across his face with makeup and silicone. Each step of the transformation took 6 hours to complete, and they actually built fake, moving body parts that were attached to David so they could capture as much as possible in camera.
that turned out not to be practical, much to my relief, because it looked really very uncomfortable to do that.
When it came to Peter Pettigrew, the makeup team tried hard to connect the human version of Pettigrew to Scabbers the rat through his hair, skin texture, and hands. The actor sat for hours in the makeup chair as they added the gray, balding wig, browning teeth, dirty, pointy nails, and skin texture until he was almost entirely covered in makeup and itchy fake hair.
It's a horrible profession, but I think you should be an actor.
Even though we might not realize it, Lucius Malfoy undergoes a serious change over the course of the Harry Potter movies. The actor said he went from a simple, natural look and wig application to a lot more time in the makeup trailer. They added prosthetic bags under his eyes and very heavy, pale makeup to make him look as tired and unhealthy as the character needed to be.
The 8th film has become a shadow of his former self.
If Polyjuice Potion were a real thing, it would be much easier than what Brendan Gleeson went through to become Mad-Eye Moody. They spent hours adding an entire layer of skin over his real face to build the eye and its holder into, in order to make it look like it was embedded in his face. They covered his real eye in tape and added the bulging glass eye over it, so for the entire shoot he could only see out of one eye. The magical eye was radio-controlled by a crew member who made it swivel around, but sometimes it would actually pop out.
That's it, let's finish this right here.
We all remember the scene where Harry breaks his arm playing Quidditch, and Gilderoy Lockhart comes along to fix it, but ends up removing all the bones instead. Well, that wobbly, boneless arm wasn't CGI at all, but was actually a prosthetic that they actually attached to the real Daniel Radcliffe. And guess what? He still has it. Along with a few pairs of Potter glasses, Daniel said that he has that creepy fake arm sitting in his attic all these years later.
But I don't seek them out.
When creating Professor Trelawney, Emma Thompson had the idea that since she is always looking into the future, the divination teacher can't really see where she is in the present. So they came up with her famous Coke bottle glasses. While they were perfect for making her eyes look very funny and large, they were actually quite uncomfortable as they magnified everything around her. For the enormous battle at Hogwarts, the makeup team worked overtime to apply fake blood and wounds to the literally hundreds of actors and background performers playing the students and members of Dumbledore's army. The actors, especially Matthew Lewis, who played Neville Longbottom, had to wear itchy, uncomfortable fake blood and silicone prosthetic wounds for days on end during filming, which got very tiresome in the end.
Which was great to start with, you know, blood and cuts and bruises, and it takes like 2 hours.
To transform the very young, very famous actors into older versions of themselves, it required lots of prosthetics and makeup, but not too much. According to the crew, the first old age test made Ron look about 75 years old and seriously unhealthy. Eventually, they found a good balance. Did it work? Well, that's for you to decide.